In the bustling heart of a sprawling American metropolis, life moved at a relentless pace. Beneath towering skyscrapers and dazzling neon lights, stories of triumph and despair unfolded quietly, unnoticed by most. Among these stories was that of a young boy named Caleb, a child of the streets whose innocence and resilience painted a stark contrast to the cold indifference of the world around him. Caleb's life was a testament to survival, a journey through shadows where fleeting glimpses of light held the promise of a brighter future. This is a story of hope, redemption, and the unseen ties that bind us. It begins on a street corner, where Caleb's life intersected with that of a powerful man named Henry Reed, sparking a chain of events that would challenge not only their destinies but also the very fabric of trust, betrayal, and courage. The sun was setting over the sprawling skyline of Hamilton City, casting a golden hue over the streets teeming with life. Among the bustling crowd, Caleb stood quietly at the corner of Main and Jefferson. His small, dirt-streaked face and oversized jacket were easy to overlook amid the sea of commuters, shoppers, and tourists. A battered cardboard sign rested against his legs, its scrawled plea for help barely legible. Caleb had learned not to expect much. Most people hurried by without a glance, their minds consumed with schedules and ambitions. The few who noticed him often did so with disdain or pity, which stung almost as much as the gnawing hunger in his stomach. Yet, he remained steadfast, his dark eyes scanning the crowd for a face that might offer a sliver of kindness. As Caleb murmured his soft plea for help, a woman approached. She was elegantly dressed in a tailored coat, her heels clicking sharply against the pavement. Her jewelry sparkled under the fading light, and her air of confidence seemed unshakable. Caleb hesitated, summoning his courage. "Ma'am, please," he called, his voice barely audible. "Just a little change for food. It's been days." The woman stopped and turned her gaze on him. For a brief moment, Caleb felt a flicker of hope, but it was quickly extinguished by the icy contempt in her eyes. "Don't you dare touch me," she snapped, recoiling as though his presence alone was offensive. "Do you know how much this coat costs? More than you'll ever see in your miserable life." Her words sliced through Caleb's defenses, but he stood his ground. His hands trembled as he whispered, "I can work, clean your car, anything, please." The woman's sneer deepened, and she raised her voice, drawing the attention of passersby. "Work? Look at you, dirty, stinking, probably full of lice. You're just another beggar trying to scam decent folks like me." A small crowd began to gather, their curiosity piqued. Phones appeared, their lenses capturing the exchange. Caleb's heart pounded as humiliation flooded him, but he refused to lower his head. "You don't know me," he said softly, his voice trembling but firm. "You don't know what I've been through." Before the woman could retort, a commanding voice cut through the tension. "Enough." The crowd turned to see a man step forward. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a tailored suit, his presence exuding authority. His gaze swept over the woman, silencing her instantly. "I was just trying to teach him a lesson," she muttered defensively, her voice losing its edge. The man ignored her and approached Caleb, his expression softening as he took in the boy's disheveled appearance. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a folded bill and handed it to Caleb. "Here," he said, his voice calm. Caleb stared at the money in disbelief. It was more than he had ever held at once. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. The man nodded and glanced back at the woman, his gaze piercing. "Today, you've shown everyone here who you really are." Without waiting for a response, he turned back to Caleb and smiled gently. "Take care of yourself, kid." And then he was gone, disappearing into the crowd as quickly as he had appeared. That night, Caleb found a spot under an overpass. Clutching the bill tightly, the man's unexpected kindness had awakened something in him, a flicker of hope that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, he dared to imagine a life beyond mere survival. The next morning, Caleb's hunger drove him to a bakery he had passed many times before. The aroma of fresh bread and pastries was almost overwhelming, and he hesitated outside the door, unsure if he belonged. As he reached for the handle, a voice hissed from behind him, "Don't even think about it." Startled, Caleb turned to see a girl about his age. Her messy hair and tattered coat mirrored his own appearance, but her sharp eyes and confident stance spoke of someone well acquainted with street life. "Who are you?" Caleb asked cautiously. "Name's Riley," she replied, crossing her arms. "And if you know what's good for you, you'll stay away from places like this." Caleb frowned. "Why? I just want to buy something to eat." Riley scoffed. "Places like this call the cops the second they see someone like us. Trust me." She gave him a once-over and smirked. "You're new at this." "Huh, I've been on the streets for a while," Caleb said defensively. "Yeah, but not like this," Riley countered. "You think someone hands you a big bill, and suddenly you can waltz into a bakery like you belong. Doesn't work that way." Caleb flushed with embarrassment. "Then where am I supposed to go?" Riley's expression softened, and she gestured down the street. "There's a food cart a few blocks away where they won't look twice at you. Come on." As they sat by a fountain, eating sandwiches from the cart, Caleb studied Riley curiously. "Why do you help me?" he asked between bites. Riley shrugged. "Someone helped me once. Figured I'd pay it forward. But don't get used to it. Out here, people smile at you one minute and take everything you've got the next." "What should I do, then?" Caleb asked. Riley looked him in the eye, her tone serious. "You make a plan. You get smart, lay low, and find a way off these streets." Caleb absorbed her words, feeling the weight of them. That night, as he lay in a quiet alley Riley had shown him, his mind churned with possibilities. For the first time, he wasn't just thinking about how to survive the next day, he was thinking about how to escape the life he had known. But fate had other plans. The following weeks were a blur of lessons and survival tactics as Riley took Caleb under her wing. She taught him how to navigate the streets of Hamilton City, where to find safe places to sleep, which shopkeepers wouldn't kick him out, and how to blend into the crowd when trouble arose. Caleb absorbed everything like a sponge, but a part of him was restless. His encounter with the mysterious man, Henry Reed, lingered in his thoughts. Henry had been different. He hadn't just given Caleb money, he had acknowledged him, seen him as more than just a kid on the streets. Caleb clung to the memory, using it as a beacon of hope. He often wondered if their paths would ever cross again. One evening, Caleb and Riley were perched on the edge of a park fountain, sharing a sandwich Riley had bartered for earlier. The city lights twinkled in the distance, casting their shadows across the water. "You've been quiet," Riley said, breaking the silence. "What's on your mind?" Caleb hesitated. "Do you ever feel like you're meant for something more?" Riley let out a dry laugh, though it lacked its usual edge. "Surviving is enough for me. Out here, more isn't something we get to dream about. Caleb faltered. "I can't stop thinking about him. The man who helped me. Henry. I feel like he needs help, too." Riley gave him a skeptical look. "A guy like that, with a suit like his? Trust me, Caleb, people like him don't need help from people like us." But Caleb couldn't shake the feeling that Henry's life wasn't as perfect as it seemed. There had been a sadness in his eyes that day. Something Caleb recognized all too well. The next day, unable to ignore his instincts, Caleb ventured back to the upscale neighborhood where he had first met Henry. He wandered aimlessly for hours, unsure of what he was looking for. Just as he was about to give up, he spotted a familiar figure stepping out of a sleek office building. It was Henry. Caleb's heart raced as he watched the man's purposeful stride. Summoning his courage, he called out, "Henry." Henry paused, his gaze sweeping the street until it landed on Caleb. A flicker of recognition crossed his face. "You," Henry said, approaching him. "Caleb, right?" Caleb nodded, surprised that Henry remembered his name. "I just wanted to see if you were okay." Henry's expression softened, though a shadow lingered in his eyes. He gestured toward a nearby park bench. "Walk with me." As they sat beneath a canopy of trees, Henry leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. For a moment, he seemed lost in thought. "You're perceptive, Caleb," he said finally, "more than most people I know." Caleb shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to respond. "There's a lot going on in my life," Henry admitted, his voice tinged with weariness. "Things I can't ignore anymore. My wife, Amelia, she's not the person I thought she was." Caleb frowned. "What do you mean?" Henry hesitated, lowering his voice. "I think she's trying to control everything. My life, my company, my assets. I even suspect she's trying to poison me." Caleb's breath caught, a chill running down his spine. "Poison you? Why would she do that?" "Power," Henry said simply. "She's woven herself into every aspect of my life. Leaving her isn't just difficult, it's dangerous." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Caleb straightened, determination hardening his gaze. "I'll help you," he said. Henry looked at him, startled. "Why would you do that?" "Because you helped me," Caleb replied, "and everyone deserves to be free." The following days were a whirlwind of secrecy and planning. Caleb shared Henry's story with Riley, though her initial reaction was far from supportive. "This is insane," she said, pacing the alley where they often met. "You're risking everything for some guy you barely know." "He's not just some guy," Caleb argued. "He's different, and he needs help." Riley crossed her arms, clearly torn. "Fine," she said at last, "but if we're doing this, we're doing it smart." Together, they began observing Amelia's routines, taking note of her comings and goings. Caleb was struck by how different she seemed in person, a picture of elegance and control. Yet there was a coldness about her that sent shivers down his spine. One evening, Riley managed to overhear a conversation between Amelia and a man at a cafe. The details were chilling. "She's planning to transfer all his assets to herself," Riley whispered to Caleb later. "She's got everything lined up, papers, signatures, even witnesses." Caleb's stomach turned. "We have to stop her." The opportunity came sooner than they expected. Following Amelia to a mansion on the outskirts of the city, Caleb and Riley snuck inside, careful to avoid detection. In the dim light of a study, they found Amelia poring over documents, her voice low as she whispered into her phone. "Once it's done, he'll have nothing," she said, her tone icy. "He won't even see it coming." Caleb's hands trembled as he snapped photos of the papers spread across her desk. Riley kept watch by the door, her sharp eyes scanning the hallway for movement. As they slipped out of the mansion and into the night, Caleb felt a surge of adrenaline and fear. They had the evidence, but would it be enough? The next morning, Caleb handed the photos to Henry, his heart pounding. "This is everything you need to prove what she's doing," he said. Henry's hands shook as he scanned the images. "You've saved me," Caleb, he said, his voice filled with emotion. But I need one more favor. What is it? Caleb asked. I need you to be there when I confront her. Henry said, I need a witness. Caleb hesitated, the weight of the request sinking in. Then he nodded. I'll do it. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Caleb and Henry arrived at the mansion. The air was thick with tension as they waited in the grand sitting room. Finally, Amelia entered, her face a mask of cold composure. What is this? She asked, her eyes narrowing as she spotted Caleb. Why is he here? Henry stepped forward, holding up the evidence. We know everything. Amelia, your lies, your plans, all of it. Amelia's expression hardened, and she scoffed. And what do you plan to do? Take me down with the word of a street rat? She turned to Caleb, her gaze filled with disdain. You don't belong here. Caleb met her gaze unflinchingly. Maybe not, he said, his voice steady, but you don't deserve to be here either. Amelia's face twisted with fury, and she lunged toward Henry. Caleb instinctively stepped between them, catching her arm. Before she could react, the sound of footsteps filled the room. A team of police officers entered, summoned by Henry earlier. Amelia's defiance faltered as she realized her defeat. As the officers led her away, her eyes lingered on Caleb, filled with bitter contempt. But Caleb stood tall, unshaken. When the mansion fell silent, Henry turned to Caleb, gratitude softening his expression. I couldn't have done this without you, he said. Caleb smiled, the weight of his past lifting slightly. You saved me first, Henry. I just repaid the favor. Henry's gaze warmed. If you're willing, I'd like to help you find a new path. A fresh start. Caleb's heart raced, hope filling him. For so long, he had only known survival. But now, with Henry by his side, he dared to dream of something more. The days following Amelia's arrest were surreal for Caleb. He had spent years blending into the shadows, surviving on scraps and instinct. Now, he stood at the threshold of a new life. One that Henry Reed had promised to help him build. But change, as Caleb quickly discovered, was rarely without its trials. Henry kept his word, bringing Caleb into his world. Caleb moved into a modest guest house on Henry's sprawling estate, nestled far from the chaos of the city. For the first time in years, he slept on a bed with clean sheets, ate warm meals, and felt safe. Yet, the opulence around him only served as a stark reminder of the gap between their lives. Henry, true to his promise, began introducing Caleb to opportunities, schooling, mentorship, and even small roles within his company. But despite the warmth Henry offered, Caleb struggled with feelings of inadequacy. He was haunted by whispers of his past life, and the streets he had called home were never far from his mind. One evening, Caleb sat on the edge of the estate's garden fountain, staring at the reflection of the moon in the still water. Riley's voice broke his reverie. You look like a fish out of water, she said, emerging from the shadows. Caleb turned, startled. Riley, how did you? I'm resourceful. Remember? She said with a smirk, taking a seat beside him. Her presence was a jarring reminder of the life Caleb had left behind. Why are you here? He asked. I was curious, she admitted. Wanted to see if you'd gone soft living the high life. Caleb chuckled, though it lacked humor. It's not what you think. It's complicated. Yeah, I can see that, Riley said, gesturing to the sprawling mansion behind them. So, what's the deal? You're Henry's charity case now? Caleb bristled. It's not like that. He's helping me. Riley studied him, her expression unreadable. Good, because I'm not here to drag you back. I just wanted to make sure you're okay." For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of their shared past lingering between them. The tranquility of Caleb's new life was shattered one morning when Henry called him into his study. The room was lined with dark wood shelves and leather-bound books. But today, it felt oppressively small. "We need to talk," Henry said, his tone grave. "What's wrong?" Caleb asked, his chest tightening. Henry handed him a folder. Inside were documents detailing Amelia's financial dealings, hidden accounts, offshore transfers, and names Caleb didn't recognize. "She's still pulling strings from prison," Henry said, his jaw tight. "She has allies, people who were loyal to her even before we married. They're trying to dismantle everything I've built." Caleb's stomach churned. "What can we do?" Henry leaned back in his chair, his gaze heavy. "We fight back, but it won't be easy. These people are powerful, and they'll stop at nothing to get what they want." Caleb nodded, the determination in his eyes mirroring Henry's. "I'm with you." The fight began almost immediately. Henry's company faced a series of sabotage attempts, leaked documents, fraudulent lawsuits, and rumors that threatened to tarnish his reputation. Caleb watched as Henry battled these challenges with a calm determination, though the strain was evident in his weary eyes. Caleb, wanting to help, began investigating the names in the folder Henry had given him. He reached out to Riley, whose street smarts proved invaluable. "This guy," Riley said one night, pointing to a name on the list. "Mason Burke. I've heard about him. He runs a nightclub downtown, a front for all sorts of shady dealings." Caleb's pulse quickened. "Do you think he's connected to Amelia?" "Definitely," Riley said, "but getting close to him won't be easy." Caleb and Riley devised a plan to infiltrate the nightclub. Disguised in borrowed clothes that made them look older, they slipped into the dimly lit establishment, their eyes scanning the crowd for Mason. The air was thick with smoke and the low hum of conversation, punctuated by the occasional burst of laughter. "There," Riley whispered, nodding toward a corner booth. Mason sat surrounded by men in tailored suits, his demeanor relaxed yet commanding. Caleb's heart pounded as they approached, but Riley held him back. "Not yet," she said, "we need to listen first." They found a spot near the bar where they could overhear snippets of Mason's conversation. "Amelia's instructions," Mason was saying, his voice low but clear. "We wait for the signal before moving the assets." Caleb's blood ran cold. Amelia was still orchestrating her plans, even from behind bars. The following night, Caleb and Riley returned, this time armed with recording equipment hidden in their jackets. As they eavesdropped, they captured incriminating evidence of Mason's involvement with Amelia's schemes. But just as they were about to leave, Mason spotted them. "Hey," he barked, rising from his seat. Caleb's heart raced as Mason's men approached. Riley grabbed his arm, and they bolted toward the exit, weaving through the crowd as shouts erupted behind them. They burst into the alley, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Mason's men were close behind, and Caleb's mind raced as he searched for an escape route. "This way," Riley shouted, leading him down a narrow passage. They emerged onto a busy street, the noise and chaos providing cover as they disappeared into the crowd. The evidence they gathered proved to be the turning point, with Henry's legal team involved. Mason was arrested, and the chain of connections leading back to Amelia was exposed. The revelations sent shockwaves through Henry's business and personal life. But for the first time in months, he saw a glimmer of hope. As the dust began to settle, Henry called Caleb into his study once more. This time, his expression was one of gratitude. "You've done more for me than I can ever repay," Henry said. Caleb shook his head. You gave me a chance when no one else would. This was the least I could do. Henry smiled, though his eyes were misty. You're not just someone I helped, Caleb. You're family now. In the weeks that followed, Henry formally adopted Caleb, solidifying the bond they had forged through their shared struggles. Caleb, for the first time in his life, felt a sense of belonging. Riley, meanwhile, remained a steadfast presence in his life. Though she refused to leave the streets entirely, she often visited, sharing stories and laughter that reminded Caleb of where he had come from. Together, they forged a path forward, united by the lessons they had learned, that hope can emerge from even the darkest places, and that kindness and courage have the power to transform lives. As the story of Caleb and Henry comes to an end, we are reminded that even in the darkest corners of life, the light of kindness can spark incredible change. Caleb's journey from a life of hardship to one of hope and purpose shows us the power of connection, courage, and believing in something greater than survival. Henry's willingness to open his heart and fight for justice demonstrates that no matter how powerful adversity may seem, it is possible to rise above it with resilience and integrity. This story isn't just about two people, it's a reflection of the human spirit. It's about standing up for what is right, even when it's hard, and reaching out to others who may need a lifeline. In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in our own lives and forget about those who might be struggling in silence. But Caleb's story is a reminder to look beyond appearances and offer kindness to others, no matter how small the gesture may seem. For those navigating their own challenges, let this tale serve as proof that hope is never out of reach. Seek connections, take risks, and never underestimate your own strength to change your life, or someone else's. If you are in a position to help, remember that even the smallest act of kindness can make a world of difference. And if you're facing hardships, know that there's always a way forward. Believe in yourself, and never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. Conclusion. As the story of Caleb and Henry comes to an end, we are reminded that even in the darkest corners of life, the light of kindness can spark incredible change. Caleb's journey from a life of hardship to one of hope and purpose shows us the power of connection, courage, and believing in something greater than survival. Henry's willingness to open his heart and fight for justice demonstrates that no matter how powerful adversity may seem, it is possible to rise above it with resilience and integrity. This story isn't just about two people, it's a reflection of the human spirit. It's about standing up for what is right, even when it's hard, and reaching out to others who may need a lifeline. A message for you. In today's world, it's easy to get caught up in our own lives and forget about those who might be struggling in silence. But Caleb's story is a reminder to look beyond appearances and offer kindness to others, no matter how small the gesture may seem. For those navigating their own challenges, let this tale serve as proof that hope is never out of reach. Seek connections, take risks, and never underestimate your own strength to change your life, or someone else's. If you are in a position to help, remember that even the smallest act of kindness can make a world of difference. And if you're facing hardships, know that there's always a way forward. Believe in yourself, and never stop fighting for a better tomorrow. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more inspiring and thrilling tales, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue to bring you the best stories from around the world, completely free of charge. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss an update. Let us know in the comments what lessons you took from Caleb and Henry's journey, and share your own stories of resilience and hope. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community. We'll see you next time with another unforgettable tale. Stay kind, stay hopeful, and remember, the best is yet to come.